I was about to sign everything over to my son. My daughter-in-law smiled and placed a cup of coffee in front of me. Steam rising, the smell rich and inviting. Then Maria, our housekeeper, bumped into the table. Coffee spilled everywhere. She leaned close, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't drink it, Mr. Whitmore. Please, just trust me." In the chaos, the cups got mixed up. Rebecca grabbed one and took a long drink. 5 minutes later, she collapsed. They thought they were so clever. They thought I was just a sick old man ready to die. But they had no idea what was waiting for them. Justice was coming. Before I tell you what happened in that ambulance, let me ask you something. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. I need to know this story is reaching people who need to hear it. Because what I'm about to tell you could save someone's life. My name is Samuel Whitmore. I'm 72 years old, and for the past 50 years, I believed a father's only job was to give, to build something worth inheriting, to make your children's lives easier than your own. I spent half a century building Whitmore Properties into a $28 million commercial real estate empire here in Boston. The brownstone on Beacon Hill had been mine and my late wife's for 35 years. Margaret passed 8 years ago from cancer. Some mornings I still set 2 coffee cups out before I remember she's gone. Henry is our only child, 41 years old. He joined the company at 25, worked his way through property management, acquisitions, finance. Not exceptional, but he was family. That had to count for something. He married Rebecca Chen 7 years ago. Rebecca had an MBA from Wharton, worked in corporate finance before joining our company as VP of Development. Sharp, ambitious, beautiful in that polished way that comes from careful planning. My late wife used to say Henry needed someone strong beside him. Rebecca seemed perfect. I was wrong. That October morning, I woke up feeling worse than usual. The fatigue had been building for months. Nausea that came and went. Confusion during meetings that I blamed on age. I was 72. These things happen, right? Maria Santos was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. She'd been our housekeeper for 18 years. Ever since her daughter Sophia was 5 years old. I'd helped pay for Sophia's college when Maria's husband died. Maria was family, quiet, loyal, someone who'd been there through Margaret's illness and stayed after she was gone. But that morning Maria's hands were shaking as she poured my coffee into the blue porcelain cup Margaret had given me years ago. "Everything all right, Maria?" She looked up, startled. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore." Too quick, too rehearsed. Her eyes kept darting toward the study, then back to me. Something was wrong. Henry had called the night before. "Dad, tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. We need to finalize the succession plan. It's time." His voice had sounded strange. Not excited, not sad, just flat. Like a man reading from a script he'd memorized. They arrived exactly at 10. Henry wore an expensive suit I didn't recognize. Rebecca carried a leather portfolio in one hand and an insulated coffee carrier in the other. Her smile was bright, practiced, perfect. "Good morning, Samuel." She always called me Samuel, never Dad. "We brought your favorite coffee, that special dark roast from the place on Newbury Street." I glanced at the kitchen. Maria had already prepared my coffee. It was waiting in my study in the cup I used every morning. But Rebecca was already pulling out new cups from her insulated carrier, setting them on the entry table with efficient movements. "You're thoughtful," I said, watching her carefully arrange the cups. "Anything for family." Her smile never wavered. We walked into my study. The morning sun cut through the tall windows, making the dust visible in the air. Henry immediately spread documents across my mahogany desk. Transfer agreements, updated corporate bylaws, new signature authority for bank accounts. "We need your signature today, Dad. Just formalities. Makes the transition cleaner." Rebecca set one of the coffee cups in front of me. She set another in front of Henry. She kept the third for herself. I noticed her watching me, not casual watching, intense watching. like she was waiting for something specific to happen. I reached for the coffee cup she'd placed in front of me. The ceramic was warm against my palms. I lifted it toward my lips. That's when Maria appeared in the doorway carrying a tray of papers. She walked toward the desk, her steps oddly unsteady. Then she stumbled. The tray tilted. Papers flew. Her elbow slammed into my arm. Coffee erupted from the cup, splashing across the desk, soaking Henry's carefully arranged documents. "Maria," Henry shouted, jumping to his feet. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore. I'm so sorry." But even as she apologized, she was leaning close, her mouth near my ear. Her whisper was urgent, desperate. "Don't drink it, sir. Please, just trust me." She knocked my arm again. More coffee spilled. The cup tumbled from my hand. In the chaos, everything became confused. Henry cursing, grabbing documents. Rebecca lunging forward to save the papers. Maria apologizing frantically, knocking over more things. The 3 coffee cups sliding across the wet desk. "God, Maria." Rebecca's voice was sharp. "Can't you be more careful?" "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll clean this up right away." But Maria wasn't looking at Rebecca. She was looking at me. And in her eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Relief, like she'd just stopped something terrible from happening. 5 minutes of chaos. Henry irritated, blotting coffee from his suit. Rebecca dabbing at stains on her silk blouse. Maria cleaning, apologizing. The documents ruined. The coffee cups mixed up on the desk. I couldn't tell which was which anymore. Rebecca grabbed one of the cups and took a long drink. "We'll have to reprint these documents, Henry. This is ridiculous." Henry nodded, but he was watching Maria with an expression I couldn't quite read. Suspicion, maybe. Or fear. Maria's warning echoed in my head. "Don't drink it. Trust me." That coffee, the one Rebecca had brought. The one she'd placed in front of me so carefully. Then Rebecca went pale. It happened in seconds. One moment she was complaining about her ruined blouse. The next she swayed in her chair. "I feel strange." Henry turned to her.
"What's wrong? Dizzy?"
"Really dizzy. Everything's spinning." She tried to stand. Her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, and I saw it clearly. The tremor in her hands, sweat beading across her forehead, despite the cool room. Her pupils contracted to tiny points. "Call 911, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Henry already had his phone out. "Yes, my wife just collapsed. Please hurry. Our address is..." His voice sounded practiced. Too smooth for someone whose wife was dying on the floor. Rebecca's body went rigid. Her back arched. Convulsions racked her frame. The coffee cup she'd been holding shattered against the hardwood floor. Maria dropped to her knees, rolling Rebecca onto her side with practiced efficiency. I knelt beside them, trying to process what I was seeing. Stroke, seizure, allergic reaction, but Maria's whisper kept replaying. "Don't drink it." That coffee Rebecca had brought. The one she'd placed so deliberately in front of me. The one she'd watched me lift toward my lips with such intense focus. The one she'd grabbed by mistake in all the confusion. The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Paramedics flooded into my study. Questions fired rapid fire. What happened? Any known allergies? What did she ingest? They started an IV, checked vitals, loaded Rebecca onto a stretcher. I watched Henry as they worked. His face when he thought no one was looking. I'd spent 41 years learning to read people. In business, everything depends on reading the room, understanding what people want, seeing past the performance to the truth underneath. I'd built a $28 million empire on that skill. What I saw on Henry's face wasn't fear for his dying wife. It wasn't panic or confusion or shock. It was the look of a man whose carefully planned script had just been torn to pieces. A man calculating his next move. A man trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. Not grief. Calculation. My son. The boy I'd raised. The man I'd spent 50 years building a legacy for. He knew exactly what was in that coffee. The paramedics worked fast, but all I could focus on was Henry across from me in the back of the ambulance. Phone pressed to his ear, voice cracking in exactly the right places as he spoke to someone. His mother's sister, he said. But I noticed his thumbs moving. He wasn't just calling, he was texting, deleting, covering tracks. I don't know what happened, he was saying into the phone. She just collapsed. We're on our way to Massachusetts General Hospital now. But I kept hearing Maria's whisper. Don't drink it, sir. Massachusetts General Hospital's emergency entrance was 4 miles from Beacon Hill. The automatic doors hissed open. They wheeled Rebecca straight into a trauma bay. A doctor appeared almost immediately. Early 40s, dark hair pulled back tight, sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her badge read Dr. Sarah Chen, Emergency Medicine. What happened? She asked, her eyes moving between Rebecca's convulsing form and the paramedics' report. Henry started talking. We were having a meeting at my father's house. Coffee, she just collapsed. Started having seizures. He was good at this. 41 years, and I'd never realized what a skilled performer my son had become. The concerned husband. The shocked family member. Every word, every gesture, perfectly calibrated. Any known allergies. Dr. Chen was examining Rebecca, checking pupils, pulse, breathing. None that we know of, Henry said quickly. Dr. Chen looked at a nurse standing beside her. Full talk screen, complete blood count, comprehensive metabolic panel, and add heavy metals to the panel. Arsenic, lead, mercury. I want all of it now. Arsenic. The word hung in the air like smoke. Arsenic? Henry's surprise sounded genuine. Almost. Why would you test for that? Dr. Chen's expression was professional, but her eyes were sharp. Her pupils are severely constricted. Heart rate is erratic. Excessive salivation. Muscle tremors. These are classic signs of acute poisoning. I'm covering all bases. She turned to me, and I realized I'd been silent this whole time. Just watching. Processing. You were there when this happened, Mr. Whitmore. Yes. We were having coffee in my study. Our housekeeper, Maria Santos, accidentally spilled it. There was confusion. Rebecca drank from one of the cups. Which cup was meant for you? The question landed like a punch. I don't know. Everything happened so fast. The cups got mixed up. Dr. Sarah Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm ordering blood work for you too, Mr. Whitmore. If that coffee was tampered with, and it was meant for you. She didn't finish the sentence. A police officer arrived while they drew my blood. Officer Patrick Sullivan, Boston Police Department. Tall, maybe 50, with the kind of weathered face that said he'd seen everything twice. Mandatory reporting, Dr. Chen explained to us. Suspected poisoning requires law enforcement notification. This is standard procedure. Henry shifted in his chair, and I caught it. Just a small movement, tension in his shoulders, fear in his eyes. Poisoning, he said. That's absurd. Who would poison Rebecca? Nobody answered him. The waiting room at Massachusetts General Hospital is like every hospital waiting room in America. Fluorescent lights that make everyone look half dead. Uncomfortable chairs designed by someone who's never had to sit in one for hours. The smell of antiseptic and fear mixing together in recycled air. Henry sat across from me, phone in his hands, typing. His face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. Who are you texting? I asked. He looked up, startled. Work. Letting them know we won't be in today. Liar. I'd spent 41 years watching this boy become a man. I knew when he was lying. The tell was always the same. He touched his wedding ring, spun it around his finger. A nervous habit he'd had since the day Rebecca slipped that band on his finger 7 years ago. The results came back 90 minutes later. Dr. Sarah Chen returned with a tablet in her hands and an expression that told me everything before she spoke. Your daughter-in-law has acute arsenic poisoning, lethal dose. She's in critical condition. We've started chelation therapy, but the next 24 hours will determine if she survives. Lethal dose. My hands stayed steady on the armrests. 50 years in business teaches you never to show weakness. Never let them see you react. And me? I asked, though I already knew. Dr. Chen's eyes held something I couldn't quite name. Pity, maybe. Or anger on my behalf. You have chronic arsenic exposure, Mr. Whitmore. Blood levels consistent with low-dose poisoning over approximately 4 months. We're starting chelation therapy for you immediately. You'll need to be admitted for monitoring. 4 months. July, August, September, October. The fatigue I'd blamed on being 72 years old. The nausea I'd attributed to grief over losing Margaret. The confusion during board meetings that made me think I was developing dementia. The tremors in my hands I thought were just the natural progression of getting old. Someone had been killing me slowly for 4 months. And today was supposed to be the day it finally worked. Who has regular access to your food and beverages, Mr. Whitmore? Dr. Chen asked. I looked at Henry. He was staring at his phone, but his face had gone white. My son Henry, his wife Rebecca, my housekeeper, Maria Santos. The detective will want to speak with all of them. Officer Sullivan will coordinate that. Through the consultation room window, I could see Henry in the hallway. Phone out again. Fingers flying across the screen. Texting someone. Deleting messages probably. Destroying evidence while his wife fought for her life 20 feet away in the intensive care unit. He looked up. Our eyes met through the glass partition. For just a second his mask slipped. Not guilt. Not remorse. Not even fear for Rebecca lying in that trauma bay with poison burning through her system. Just cold calculation. Like he was solving a problem, recalculating odds, planning his next move. My son. The boy I'd held in the delivery room at this very hospital 41 years ago. The child I'd taught to ride a bike on the sidewalks of Beacon Hill. To throw a baseball in Boston Common. To shake hands with confidence at business dinners. The young man I'd mentored through Harvard Business School. The heir I'd spent 50 years building a $28 million empire for. I'd been a businessman for half a century. I'd survived the dot-com crash, hostile takeover attempts, the 2008 financial crisis that destroyed half my competitors. I knew the difference between bad luck and deliberate sabotage. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. Premeditated. Methodical. Patient. 4 months of slow poisoning. Financial documents prepared. A meeting scheduled. Coffee delivered personally by Rebecca. Watched carefully to make sure I drank it. Henry standing by, ready to call 911 when the heart attack happened. Ready to play the devastated son. And my son, standing in that hallway at Massachusetts General Hospital, destroying evidence while his wife paid the price for a plan that had gone wrong. Dr. Sarah Chen was still talking. Chelation therapy protocols. Monitoring schedules. Recovery timelines. But all I could think about was that look on Henry's face. I'd taught him everything about business. How to read a balance sheet. How to negotiate a commercial lease. How to spot weakness in a competitor and exploit it. How to close a deal. But I'd also taught him, without meaning to, how to hide what you really feel. How to perform. How to wear a mask so perfect that even your own father can't see the truth underneath. Henry looked away first. Turned back to his phone. Back to his careful lies. I sat in that consultation room at Massachusetts General Hospital. Poison in my blood. Betrayal in my heart, and one thought kept echoing through my mind. I was supposed to be dead. That coffee Rebecca brought was meant to kill me. The meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning was supposed to end with me signing those transfer documents, and then suffering what would look like a massive heart attack. Natural causes. Tragic but expected for a 72-year-old man who'd been feeling ill for months. Rebecca would have played the grieving daughter-in-law. Henry the devastated only son. They would have inherited everything. $28 million. Whitmore Properties. The commercial holdings across Boston. The brownstone on Beacon Hill. Everything I'd spent 50 years building. Except Maria Santos. a housekeeper who owed me nothing but loyalty, had whispered 4 words that saved my life. "Don't drink it, sir." "Doctor." Sarah Chen finished explaining the treatment plan. Officer Patrick Sullivan asked preliminary questions about the timeline, who was present, what we'd consumed. Henry came back into the room, his performance perfect again. The worried husband, the shocked son, the man who couldn't possibly understand how this had happened. But I knew the truth now, and sitting in that hospital room at Massachusetts General Hospital, poison coursing through my veins but alive when I should be dead, I made a decision. If they wanted to destroy me, they'd have to face what came next. Justice wasn't just coming, it was already here. I found Maria Santos the next morning in the hospital chapel. She was alone in the last pew, rosary beads wrapped around her hands, tears streaming down her face. The chapel was small, tucked away on the 2nd floor of Massachusetts General Hospital. Most people didn't even know it existed, but Maria had always been religious. Every Sunday at St. Anthony's in the North End for as long as I'd known her. She looked up when my footsteps echoed on the stone floor. "Mr. Whitmore." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry." I sat beside her. The chapel smelled of furniture polish and old prayer books, scents that reminded me of Margaret, Sunday mornings before she got sick. A life that felt impossibly distant now. "You saved my life, Maria. I should have told you sooner." Her hands were shaking. The rosary beads clicked together. "I saw her, Mrs. Rebecca, 7 weeks ago. It was a Thursday morning. You were still sleeping. I came down early to start breakfast." She pulled a small spiral notebook from her purse. The kind you can buy at any drugstore. The pages were filled with careful handwriting. Dates. Times. Observations written in blue ink. July 18th. Mr. Whitmore complained of nausea after breakfast. Mrs. Rebecca was in the kitchen alone at 6:15 in the morning. I found her standing by the coffee maker. Maria turned the page. July 29th. Mr. Whitmore dizzy during afternoon phone call. Mrs. Rebecca made his lunch that day. Said she wanted to bring him a sandwich in his study. Another page. August 12th. Mr. Whitmore confused during the board meeting. Asked the same question 3 times. Mrs. Rebecca had been at the house that morning. Made coffee for him before he left. September 3rd. Mr. Whitmore's hands shaking so badly he couldn't sign a document. Mrs. Rebecca brought him tea that afternoon. The notebook went on 3 months of careful documentation. Every time I got sick. Every time Rebecca had been in the house early. Every time she'd insisted on preparing something for me herself. "You got sicker every time she was here early," Maria said. "Only on days when she insisted on helping with breakfast. When she wanted to make your coffee herself. When she brought food to your study." Her phone appeared from her purse. An old iPhone with a cracked screen. She opened the Photos app. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely navigate. The first photo was blurry but clear enough. Rebecca at my kitchen counter. A small glass vial in her hand. The image was taken from the doorway, partially hidden. Another photo. Rebecca's designer purse open on the counter. The same small vial visible inside, tucked between her wallet and lipstick. "I started watching her," Maria said. "After the 3rd time you got sick and she'd been there that morning. I started paying attention. I started documenting." She opened a recording app on her phone. I recorded them talking too. My phone in my apron pocket when I was cleaning. The sound is terrible. It's muffled, but you can hear enough. She played the first recording. Static. The sound of movement. Then voices, distant and unclear but recognizable. Rebecca's voice. "The final dose needs to be tomorrow morning. When he signs the company over." Henry's voice quieter. "You're sure about the amount?" "Rebecca, I've calculated it perfectly. It'll cause cardiac arrest within 2 hours. By the time anyone thinks to test for arsenic, it'll be too late." The recording crackled with static, but I could make out more. "Henry, and there's no way it can be traced back to us." "Rebecca, arsenic mimics heart failure perfectly. He's 72, he's been sick for months, Everyone knows he's been struggling. The coroner will see exactly what we want him to see. A sick old man who finally gave out. She laughed. Actually laughed. Maria stopped the recording. Her face was streaked with tears. Another recording. This one from a week earlier, based on the date stamp. Henry's voice. The symptoms are escalating perfectly. The confusion, the tremors, the nausea. Everyone at the office has noticed. They all think he's declining naturally. Rebecca. Once he signs everything over, we do it that same morning. Then it's ours. $28 million plus the life insurance policies. We can sell Whitmore properties within 6 months and move somewhere warm. Somewhere without extradition treaties, just in case. I sat in that chapel pew at Massachusetts General Hospital, listening to my son plot my murder. Listening to him discuss my symptoms, like I was a science experiment. Listening to him plan what to do with my money, before my body was even cold. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. My voice sounded strange, hollow. Maria turned to face me. Because you loved him so much, Mr. Whitmore. You were so proud of Henry. Every board meeting, you'd talk about how he was learning the business, how he'd take over someday, how everything you'd built was for him. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, that you'd think I was jealous or angry or trying to cause trouble, that you'd fire me. And then I couldn't protect you anymore. If I was gone, there'd be no one watching, no one who knew what they were doing. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. 20 years ago, my daughter Sophia needed surgery. Neuroblastoma. Stage 3 cancer. She was only 5 years old. The insurance company wouldn't cover the experimental treatment. It was our only chance, but it cost $400,000. We had nothing. My husband had just died. I was going to lose her. Maria looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. You paid for everything, Mr. Whitmore. The surgery, the treatments, the hospital bills, the medications. $400,000. You saved my daughter's life. She's 25 now. She's a nurse at Boston Children's Hospital. She has a life because of you. She gripped my hand. I couldn't let them kill you. I owed you my child's life. How could I stand by and watch them poison you? How could I let them murder the man who saved my Sophia? You didn't owe me anything, Maria. I owed you everything. The chapel door opened. A woman in her early 50s walked in. Practical suit, badge clipped to her belt, sharp eyes that took in the scene immediately. Samuel Whitmore, she said. I'm Detective Catherine Morrison, Boston Police Department. Doctor, Sarah Chen said I might find you here. We moved to a private consultation room on the 3rd floor. Detective Morrison set up a recording device on the table between us. She was methodical, professional. The kind of cop who'd seen every kind of human betrayal and still managed to care. Mrs. Santos, why didn't you report this earlier? She asked after Maria had shown her the notebook, the photos, played the audio recordings. I was scared, Maria said. Mr. Henry threatened to fire me twice last month. Said I was too nosy. Said I was spending too much time in areas of the house where I didn't need to be. I thought if I accused them without proof, they'd fire me, and then they'd kill Mr. Whitmore, and there'd be no one to stop them. But you did gather proof, Detective Morrison said, examining the notebook. I had to. I needed evidence. I needed something that would make people believe me, because I knew when I finally told the truth, they'd try to say I was lying. They'd try to say I was stealing, or that I was angry about something. I needed proof that couldn't be denied. Detective Morrison listened to the recordings 3 times. She photographed every page of Maria's notebook. She downloaded the photos from Maria's phone. Finally she looked at me. Mr. Whitmore, based on this evidence, your son Henry and his wife Rebecca may be involved in a conspiracy to commit murder. We'll need search warrants for your home, for their residence, and for their offices at Whitmore Properties. We'll need to examine financial records, computer files, phone records. She paused. Detective Catherine Morrison's eyes narrowed. She was sharp. She knew I was holding something back. When you're ready, Mr. Whitmore, we'll need to know everything. Withholding evidence can compromise the entire investigation. I understand. I'll tell you everything. I just need to be sure I can trust you first. She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Fair enough, but don't wait too long. Every hour that passes, they have more time to destroy evidence. That afternoon, I made a decision. Detective Morrison needed to know everything. Detective Catherine Morrison needed to know everything. I called her back to Massachusetts General Hospital that evening. Maria was there. Officer Patrick Sullivan joined us. We sat in the same consultation room, and I told them what I'd been holding back. I installed hidden security cameras 3 weeks ago, I said. Detective Morrison's pen stopped mid-note. You what? Professional surveillance system. Video and audio. My study and living room. High definition. Cloud backup. Why didn't you mention this yesterday? Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the frustration underneath. Because I needed to be sure I could trust you. I've spent 50 years in business, detective. You learn to verify before you commit. I needed to see how you'd handle Maria's evidence first. I needed to know you'd take this seriously. Mr. Whitmore, withholding evidence. I'm not withholding it now. I'm giving it to you. All of it. Officer Sullivan leaned forward. Why did you install cameras in the first place? Henry pushed too hard for that meeting. Called me 4 times in 2 weeks. Kept saying we needed to finalize the succession plan immediately. Kept asking if I'd updated my will. Rebecca's concern about my health felt rehearsed. Scripted, like she'd practiced the right amount of worry to show. I paused, remembering. And the confusion during board meetings scared me. I thought maybe I was developing dementia, maybe Alzheimer's. I wanted to review footage of myself. See if I was really as bad as I feared. I wanted proof that I was still competent to run my own company. So you installed cameras to watch yourself, Detective Morrison said. At first, yes, but then I started noticing things in the footage. Conversations when they thought I was out. Moments when they thought no one was watching. My instincts said something was wrong. I just couldn't prove it. So I kept recording, hoping I was being paranoid. Praying my son would remember the values I tried to teach him, that he'd choose honor over money. And did he? Morrison asked quietly. No, he chose money every single time. 2 hours later, we sat in a conference room at Boston Police Department headquarters. I'd given Detective Morrison access to the cloud storage account. She'd pulled up the footage on a laptop connected to a large monitor on the wall. The first video was time-stamped 2 weeks before the poisoning incident. My study, Marcus and Rebecca alone. I'd been at a property inspection in Cambridge that afternoon. The video was crystal clear. Rebecca held up a small glass vial to the light. This is the final dose, she said. Are you absolutely sure about the amount? Henry was pacing. I could see the anxiety in his movements. The weakness Maria had mentioned in her summary. You calculated it correctly? He asked. It'll cause cardiac arrest within 90 minutes to 2 hours. By the time anyone thinks to run a toxicology screen, it'll be too late. The coroner will see a 72-year-old man with a history of declining health, heart failure, natural causes. And it can't be traced back to us. Rebecca's smile was cold, clinical. Arsenic mimics heart attack symptoms perfectly. Chest pain, difficulty breathing, cardiac arrhythmia. Everything will point to natural causes. I've researched this thoroughly, Henry. I know what I'm doing. Henry stopped pacing. He looked at the vial. Once we do this, there's no going back. Once we do this, we're free. $28 million. The company, the properties, the brownstone on Beacon Hill, everything he's hoarded for himself while treating you like an employee instead of his son. He gave me a job. He gave you scraps. Rebecca cut him off. You've worked for him for 16 years, Henry. 16 years. And what do you have to show for it? A salary. No ownership stake. No real authority. He treats you like a manager, not an heir. You're 41 years old and you're still asking permission to make basic business decisions. Henry's face twisted. I could see it on the screen. The resentment, the weakness, the need for her approval. You're right, he said quietly. I know I'm right. Once he signs everything over tomorrow morning, we do it immediately. That same morning. Then we wait exactly 2 weeks. Grieving son, devastated daughter-in-law. Then we put Whitmore Properties on the market, and we're gone. 6 months, we're living in the Cayman Islands. No extradition, no questions. Detective Morrison paused the video. They planned this in detail. The timeline, the exit strategy, even the extradition issue. There's more, I said. She played another clip. 5 days before the poisoning. Same location. My study. Henry was sitting in my chair, behind my desk. Rebecca stood beside him. The confusion is getting worse, Henry said. Everyone at the office has noticed. They all think he's declining. Early dementia probably. Perfect, Rebecca said. That makes it even more believable when he has a massive heart attack. Stress, age, cognitive decline. It all fits the narrative. What about Maria? Henry asked. She's been watching us. I've seen her. She's been in places she doesn't need to be. Rebecca waved her hand dismissively. She's a housekeeper. No one will believe her over us. And once he's gone, we'll fire her immediately. Before she can cause any problems. She's been with us for 18 years, and she's loyal to him, not to us. She's a liability, Henry. The moment your father is dead, Maria Santos is gone. Henry nodded slowly. You're right. Another video. This one from 3 days before the incident. Late evening. I'd already gone to bed. Henry and Rebecca in my living room, drinking wine from my collection. A bottle I'd been saving. A 1982 Chateau Margaux, worth $3,000. To our future, Rebecca said, raising her glass. Henry clinked his glass against hers. To freedom, and to your father finally getting what he deserves. They laughed, both of them. Sitting in my living room, drinking my wine, celebrating my approaching death. Detective Morrison stopped the video. The room was silent except for the hum of the laptop fan. Officer Sullivan spoke first. That's premeditation, clear conspiracy to commit murder. Plus the embezzlement if the financial records support it. We found evidence of that too, I said quietly. My accountant noticed discrepancies 3 months ago. Small transfers from company accounts to Henry's personal accounts, structured to avoid automatic fraud detection. $500,000 over 8 months. Detective Catherine Morrison made notes. We'll need full access to your financial records, bank statements, corporate accounts, everything. You'll have it. And the life insurance policies. I'd been waiting for that question. $7 million. Policies taken out 9 months ago. I'm the insured. Henry is the sole beneficiary. I don't remember signing the applications, but my signature is on the paperwork. Morrison looked up sharply. You don't remember signing? I've been confused for months, detective. Rebecca brought me documents to... The detective's jaw tightened. Insurance fraud on top of everything else. She made more notes. Then she looked at me directly. Mr. Whitmore, I need you to understand something. What we have here is overwhelming evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, embezzlement, and likely elder abuse. Your son and daughter-in-law are looking at life in prison. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Henry, the boy I'd raised, the son I'd loved unconditionally for 41 years. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. The search warrants were executed the next morning. Boston Police Department descended on 3 locations simultaneously. My brownstone on Beacon Hill, Henry and Rebecca's townhouse in Back Bay, the Whitmore Properties offices in Downtown Crossing. They found the arsenic in Rebecca's home office. A small vial hidden in a locked desk drawer. The same vial from the video footage. Forensic analysis would later confirm it contained arsenic trioxide, pharmaceutical grade, lethal in small doses. Financial forensics traced the embezzlement. $500,000 transferred from Whitmore Properties' corporate accounts to Henry's personal accounts over 8 months. 50 transactions, each one structured to be just under the automatic fraud detection threshold. Each one authorized with forged documentation bearing my signature. Then the insurance policies. $7 million across 3 different companies. All taken out 9 months earlier. All listing Henry as sole beneficiary. All featuring my signature on applications I didn't remember signing. Applications that had been brought to me by Rebecca, buried in stacks of routine corporate paperwork she'd insisted needed my signature immediately. Computer forensics found deleted emails, conversations between Henry and Rebecca discussing dosages, discussing symptoms, discussing the timeline. One email from Rebecca to Henry, sent 6 weeks before the poisoning. His blood work won't show anything yet. The doses are too small, but they're accumulating. By October he'll be weak enough, confused enough, ready. Another email, this one from Henry to Rebecca, sent 2 weeks before. I can't believe we're really doing this. But you're right, he's never going to give me what I deserve. If I want what's mine, I have to take it. Detective Catherine Morrison called me that evening with an update. We've arrested both of them, Mr. Whitmore. Henry and Rebecca. They're being held without bail. The charges are conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, embezzlement of $500,000, theft of controlled substances and elder abuse. What about Rebecca? I asked. Is she going to survive? She's stable. Still in intensive care at Massachusetts General Hospital, but the doctors think she'll make it. She'll be transferred to a secure medical facility once she's well enough, and then to Suffolk County Jail to await trial. And Henry? Mo. Morrison's voice softened slightly. He asked to see you, Mr. Whitmore. He's requested a visit. I sat in my hospital room at Massachusetts General Hospital. The chelation therapy had started to work. The poison was slowly leaving my system, but the damage Henry had done would take much longer to heal. What did you tell him? I asked. I told him I'd relay the message. The choice is yours. I thought about it. About seeing my son in a jail cell. About hearing whatever excuse or apology or manipulation he'd prepared. No, I said finally. Tell him no. 6 months later, the trial would begin. But long before that I had another decision to make. My will. The one Henry had tried to kill me for. The one that currently left everything to him. I called my attorney Michael Richardson, who'd handled my legal affairs for 25 years. Michael, I need to change my will immediately. Complete revision. Of course, Samuel. What changes are you thinking? If Henry is found guilty of any crime related to betrayal, violence, theft, fraud, or attempted harm against me, he inherits nothing. Not a single dollar. Everything goes into a trust. A trust for what purpose? The Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection. Everything I've built, $28 million. The company, the properties, all of it. To protect elderly people from abuse, financial exploitation, physical harm, emotional manipulation, especially when the abuser is family. Michael was quiet for a moment. Samuel, are you certain? That's your entire life's work. I'm certain. Henry tried to murder me for an inheritance he'll never receive. That's the real justice. He destroyed his life for money that was never going to be his. The will was updated and filed 2 weeks after my arrest. Dated before the poisoning incident. Before Henry's arrest. Legally unassailable. Henry would eventually find out. In a jail cell at Suffolk County. When his lawyer delivered the news. He'd murdered me for nothing. My attorney Michael Richardson slid the final document across the table at Massachusetts General Hospital. I'd been discharged from the medical ward but stayed in Boston for the investigation. The brownstone on Beacon Hill didn't feel like home anymore. Too many ghosts. Too many memories of trust that had been shattered. The trust is irrevocable, Michael said. Dated October 15th, 2 weeks before the poisoning incident. If Henry is found guilty of any crime involving betrayal, violence, theft, fraud, or attempted harm against you, he receives nothing. 0. Everything goes to the Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection. I signed the document. My hand was steadier now. The chelation therapy had cleared most of the arsenic from my system, though the doctors said it would take months to fully recover. Does Henry know yet? I asked. Not yet. But he will soon. His attorney will receive notification this week. I thought about that. My son in a jail cell at Suffolk County House of Correction, waiting for trial, planning his defense strategy, probably still believing he'd inherit everything if Rebecca took all the blame. He was about to learn the truth. Detective Catherine Morrison called that afternoon with more news. We have another witness, Mr. Whitmore. Someone who worked with Rebecca before she joined Whitmore Properties. Who? Lisa Chen. She was a colleague of Rebecca's at Carmichael Pharmaceuticals. That's where Rebecca worked before you hired her as Vice President of Development. What does she know? Enough to establish premeditation going back almost a year. She's coming in to give a statement. I think you should be here for this. I met Detective Morrison at Boston Police Department headquarters 2 hours later. Lisa Chen was already in the interview room. She was 43 years old, nervous, guilt written across her face like a confession. I should have reported this sooner, she said, as soon as I walked in. I should have said something months ago. Detective Morrison started the recording. Miss Chen, please tell us what you know about Rebecca Whitmore, formerly Rebecca Chen. We worked together at Carmichael Pharmaceuticals for 6 years. I'm a research chemist. Rebecca was in regulatory compliance, but she had a chemistry background. Undergraduate degree from MIT. Lisa pulled out a folder. Inside were printouts. Lab inventory reports. Security logs. Last March, our inventory showed arsenic trioxide missing from the restricted storage area. Approximately 50 grams. That's enough to kill dozens of people if administered correctly. March. 9 months before the poisoning. 6 months before I even started feeling sick. Rebecca had been asking strange questions for weeks before that, Lisa continued. About arsenic specifically, about detection methods, about how long it stays in the system, about what symptoms look like, about whether heart failure could mask poisoning. Detective Morrison leaned forward. What kind of questions specifically? She asked me once, hypothetically. If someone were slowly poisoned with arsenic over several months, would it show up in routine blood work? I told her probably not unless someone specifically tested for heavy metals. She asked what symptoms would look like. I told her fatigue, nausea, confusion, tremors. She wrote it all down. Lisa's hands were shaking. I thought she was just curious. She was always asking technical questions. I didn't think anything of it until the inventory discrepancy. When was the inventory discrepancy discovered? Morrison asked. March 23rd. I reported it to my supervisor. We reviewed security footage from the restricted storage area. Rebecca was on camera. March 15th at 7:30 in the morning. She had access because she was in regulatory compliance. She went into the storage area. 2 minutes. She came out with her lab coat pockets bulging. Lisa showed us the security footage on her laptop. Grainy but clear enough. Rebecca entering the restricted area. The timestamp March 15th, 7:32 a.m. She emerged at 7:34 a.m. Her coat pockets were noticeably fuller. Why didn't you report this to police? Morrison asked. My supervisor said he'd handle it internally. Rebecca resigned 2 weeks later, said she got a better offer at a real estate company in Boston. Carmichael Pharmaceuticals didn't want the publicity. A missing controlled substance. Bad press. They decided to let her go quietly and write it off. Detective Catherine Morrison's jaw tightened. They let a woman steal arsenic, and said nothing. I know it was wrong, but I was just a staff chemist. I didn't have authority to override my supervisor. And then when I saw Rebecca's picture on the news, saw that she'd been poisoned, that her father-in-law had been poisoned, I knew. I knew exactly where that arsenic had come from. Morrison made notes. This establishes premeditation going back 9 months. She didn't just decide to poison Samuel Whitmore on impulse. She planned it. She researched it. She stole the materials. She asked detailed questions about detection and symptoms. There's more, Lisa said quietly. Rebecca asked me another question, about 6 weeks before she resigned. She asked if arsenic poisoning could be blamed on someone else, if things went wrong. If it could look like the victim had taken it themselves, or if someone else could be framed for it. The room went cold. What did you tell her? I asked. I told her that would be almost impossible. That forensic toxicology could trace sources, that investigation would reveal the truth. She seemed disappointed. She'd been planning contingencies. Backup plans if the poisoning was discovered. Ways to shift blame. Ways to escape consequences. Detective Morrison stood. Miss Chen, thank you for coming forward. We'll need you to testify at trial. Your testimony establishes clear premeditation and shows Rebecca's knowledge and intent.
Richard Holloway, Henry's attorney, requested a meeting 2 weeks before trial. We met at Michael Richardson's law office in downtown Boston. Holloway was 55, silver-haired, $3,000 suit, the kind of lawyer who usually got his clients off regardless of guilt. Mr. Whitmore, my client would like to offer a plea agreement. I'm listening. Henry will plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and embezzlement. In exchange, the Commonwealth drops the attempted murder charge and recommends 20 years with possibility of parole. Michael looked at me. I looked at Holloway. No, Mr. Whitmore, this trial will be brutal. You'll have to testify. You'll have to relive every detail. You'll have to hear your son's defense attorney try to paint you as a controlling father who drove him to desperation. No deal, I said again. Henry will face every charge. Henry will hear every piece of evidence. Henry will sit in that courtroom and watch video of himself plotting my murder. And then a jury will decide his fate. Holloway tried a different approach. Henry wants to speak with you. He's asking for one conversation. Father to son. Tell him no. Mr. Whitmore. Tell him no. I have nothing to say to a son who tried to murder me. Tell him to save his words for the jury. Holloway left. Michael looked at me. You're sure about this, Samuel? Going to trial is risky. Juries can be unpredictable. I'm sure. Henry made his choice 4 months ago when he stood by and watched Rebecca poison my coffee. When he embezzled $500,000. When he took out $7 million in life insurance policies. When he planned which country to flee to after I was dead. He made his choice. Now he lives with the consequences. The media coverage was relentless. Boston Globe, Boston Herald, every local news station. National outlets picked it up. CBS, NBC, CNN. Boston real estate mogul's son charged with attempted murder. Elderly businessman poisoned by family for inheritance. Housekeeper's warning saves life, exposes murder plot. Maria's face was everywhere. She became a hero overnight. Talk shows called. News programs wanted interviews. She declined them all. This isn't about me, she told reporters outside her small apartment in East Boston. This is about protecting vulnerable people from those who should love them most. The Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection was officially established 6 weeks before trial. $28 million in initial funding. Board of Directors, myself, Michael Richardson, Detective Catherine Morrison, and Dr. Sarah Chun from Massachusetts General Hospital. Our mission was simple. Protect elderly Americans from abuse, exploitation, and harm, especially when the abuser was family. We offered legal aid for victims, investigation support, emergency housing, counseling services, advocacy in court. Everything I wished had existed for other families before their stories ended in tragedy instead of survival. Maria Santos became our first employee, not as a housekeeper, as director of victim services. She understood what it meant to notice the signs, to document the evidence, to risk everything to save someone. The trial would start in 3 weeks. But I'd already won. Henry had tried to murder me for an inheritance he'd never receive. For money that would instead help protect other elderly parents from sons and daughters just like him. That was justice. That was the price of betrayal. The courtroom at Suffolk County Superior Court was packed. Media, sketch artists, Spectators who'd lined up at 5 a.m. for a chance to watch. The case had captivated Boston. A wealthy real estate developer. A son who tried to poison him. A daughter-in-law with a chemistry degree. A loyal housekeeper who'd saved his life. It was the kind of story people couldn't look away from. I sat in the front row of the gallery, behind the prosecution table. Assistant District Attorney Rachel Thornton represented the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. She was 42, sharp as broken glass, with a reputation for never losing elder abuse cases. She'd personally requested this prosecution. Henry sat at the defense table in a suit his attorney had probably bought for him. The orange jumpsuit from Suffolk County House of Correction wouldn't play well with a jury. His attorney, Richard Holloway, whispered something to him. Henry nodded but kept his eyes down. Rebecca sat at a separate defense table with her own attorney, Patricia Walsh. Walsh was a defense lawyer who specialized in women accused of violent crimes. Her strategy was usually to paint her clients as victims of abusive men. I wondered how she'd manage that with the video evidence showing Rebecca as the mastermind. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. All rise. The Superior Court of Massachusetts, Suffolk County, is now in session. The Honorable Judge Margaret Flynn presiding. Judge Flynn entered. Mid-60s, gray hair, no-nonsense expression. She'd been on the bench for 23 years. She took her seat. Please be seated. The jury filed in. 12 faces. 8 women, for men. Ages ranging from late 20s to early 70s. These 12 strangers would decide my son's fate. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus Henry Whitmore and Rebecca Chin Whitmore, Judge Flynn said. The defendants are charged with conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, attempted murder in the first degree, embezzlement, insurance fraud, theft of controlled substances, and elder abuse. How do the defendants plead? Richard Holloway stood. Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor. Patricia Walsh stood. Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor. Judge Flynn looked at the prosecution table. Ms. Thornton, you may begin. Rachel Thornton stood and walked toward the jury. She didn't carry notes. She didn't need them. She'd memorized every detail of this case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over the next 2 weeks, you're going to hear a story that sounds impossible. A son who plotted to murder his own father. A daughter-in-law who used her chemistry expertise to slowly poison an elderly man over 4 months. A couple who embezzled $500,000, took out $7 million in life insurance policies, and planned exactly which country to flee to after the murder was complete. She paused, letting it sink in. You're going to hear that story, and part of you will want to believe it can't be true. Because how could a son do that to his father? How could a daughter-in-law poison the man who'd welcomed her into his family? How could 2 educated, successful people plan such a cold, calculated murder? Thornton walked slowly along the jury box. But this case isn't about what you want to believe. It's about what the evidence proves. And the evidence in this case is overwhelming. You're going to see video footage of the defendants planning the murder in their own words. You're going to hear audio recordings of them discussing dosages and timelines. You're going to see financial records proving they stole $500,000. You're going to hear from a pharmaceutical chemist who will testify that Rebecca Whitmore stole arsenic from her workplace 9 months before the poisoning began. She stopped in front of the jury. Samuel Whitmore built a $28 million real estate empire over 50 years. He employed his only son. He welcomed his daughter-in-law into his company. He trusted them. He loved them. And they repaid that trust by slowly poisoning him to death. Thornton's voice hardened. Except they failed. Because a housekeeper named Maria Santos noticed. She watched. She documented. She gathered evidence. And on a morning when Rebecca Whitmore placed a cup of coffee containing a lethal dose of arsenic in front of Samuel Whitmore, Maria Santos knocked that cup away and saved his life. She walked back toward the prosecution table. By the end of this trial, you'll know beyond any reasonable doubt that Henry Whitmore and Rebecca Whitmore are guilty of every charge. You'll see their plan in their own words. You'll hear their voices plotting murder. And you'll understand that justice demands accountability. Rachel Thornton sat down. Judge Flynn looked at the defense. Mr. Holloway? Richard Holloway stood. He was theatrical. He always had been. That was his style. Ladies and gentlemen, my client Henry Whitmore is not a monster. He's a man who fell under the influence of a sophisticated manipulator. A woman with expertise in chemistry and psychology. A woman who knew exactly how to control him. Who knew exactly what to say to exploit his insecurities. Who knew exactly how to make him believe that his own father was the enemy. Holloway walked toward the jury, his hands open, his expression earnest. Rebecca Chin Whitmore is a master manipulator. She has a degree in chemistry from MIT. She worked at a pharmaceutical company where she had access to controlled substances. She studied how to poison people without detection. And when she married Henry Whitmore, she saw an opportunity. He paused. Henry Whitmore loved his father. But Rebecca convinced him that Samuel Whitmore was controlling. That he would never give Henry the respect he deserved. That the only way Henry would ever be free was if his father was gone. She planted those ideas. She nurtured them. She manipulated him until he believed them. Holloway gestured toward Henry. Yes, you'll hear conversations where Henry participated in discussions. But listen carefully to those recordings. Listen to who's leading those conversations. Listen to who's planning the details. Listen to who has the chemistry knowledge to make this work. It's Rebecca. Every time, Henry was afraid. Afraid to refuse her. Afraid of what she might do if he didn't go along. He was a victim of her manipulation. I watched the jury. Some of them looked skeptical. Good. By the end of this trial, Holloway continued, you'll see that Henry Whitmore isn't a murderer. He's a man who made terrible mistakes under the influence of a woman who exploited his weaknesses. And while he must face consequences for those mistakes, those consequences should reflect the truth. He was manipulated. He was controlled. He was afraid. Holloway sat down. Patricia Walsh stood for Rebecca's opening statement. She was younger than Holloway, maybe 38, with a style that was more aggressive. Ladies and gentlemen, Rebecca Whitmore is innocent. The evidence will show that she never poisoned anyone, that she never stole arsenic, that she never planned any murder. What you'll see instead is a woman who was framed by her husband. A woman who became a scapegoat when a desperate son needed someone to blame. Walsh paced in front of the jury. Henry Whitmore embezzled $500,000 from his father's company. Henry Whitmore took out life insurance policies. Henry Whitmore had the motive, the opportunity, and the means to poison his father. And when his plan failed, when his wife accidentally drank the poison coffee meant for Samuel Whitmore, Henry needed a story. He needed someone to blame. So he blamed his wife. She pointed at Henry. The prosecution wants you to believe Rebecca is some criminal mastermind. But the evidence will show she's a victim of her husband's crimes, a victim of his lies, and a victim of his attempt to escape justice by sacrificing her. Walsh sat down. Judge Margaret Flynn looked at Rachel Thornton. Call your first witness. The Commonwealth calls Maria Santos to the stand. Maria walked to the witness stand. She wore a simple navy dress. No jewelry except a small gold cross. Her hands were clasped together, but I could see them shaking. The bailiff held out a Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Do. Rachel Thornton approached gently. Ms. Santos, how long did you work for Samuel Whitmore? 18 years. And what was your role? I was the housekeeper. I cleaned the house, prepared meals, managed the household. Did you observe anything unusual regarding Rebecca Whitmore's behavior towards Samuel Whitmore? Maria took a breath. Yes. Starting in July of last year, I noticed Mrs. Rebecca coming to the house very early in the morning. Before Mr. Whitmore woke up, she would go into the kitchen and prepare his coffee herself. Was that unusual? Very unusual. I always prepared Mr. Whitmore's coffee. It was part of my routine. But Mrs. Rebecca started insisting she wanted to do something nice for him, that she wanted to help. What happened after she started preparing his coffee? Mr. Whitmore got sick. He started complaining of nausea, fatigue, confusion. It got worse over the months. Did you connect his illness to Rebecca's presence? At first, no, but then I noticed a pattern. He only got sick on days when Mrs. Rebecca prepared his coffee or his food. On days when I prepared everything, he was better. Thornton showed Maria the spiral notebook. Is this your notebook? Yes. What did you record in this notebook? Every time Mrs. Rebecca was at the house early. Every time Mr. Whitmore got sick. Every time I saw something suspicious. I documented everything. Thornton read from the notebook. July 18th. Mr. Whitmore complained of nausea after breakfast. Mrs. Rebecca in kitchen alone at 6:15 a.m. July 29th. Mr. Whitmore dizzy during phone call. Mrs. Rebecca made his lunch. August 12th. Mr. Whitmore confused during board meeting. Mrs. Rebecca made coffee that morning. She looked at Maria. Why did you keep this record? Because I knew something was wrong. But I needed proof. If I accused them without evidence, they'd fire me. And then I couldn't protect Mr. Whitmore anymore. What happened on the morning of October 23rd? Maria's voice shook. Mrs. Rebecca brought coffee in an insulated carrier. 3 cups. She placed one in front of Mr. Whitmore very carefully. I saw the way she watched him, like she was waiting for something to happen. I knew that coffee was poisoned. What did you do? I brought papers into the study. I pretended to stumble. I knocked the coffee onto the desk. I whispered to Mr. Whitmore not to drink it. In the confusion, the cups got mixed up. Mrs. Rebecca grabbed one and drank it. What happened to Rebecca? 5 minutes later, she collapsed. Convulsions. Sweating. She almost died. You saved Samuel Whitmore's life that morning. I couldn't let them kill him. Tears were streaming down Maria's face now. 20 years ago, Mr. Whitmore saved my daughter's life. She had cancer. He paid for everything. For $100,000. I owed him everything. I couldn't let them murder him. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors were wiping their eyes. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Flynn looked at Richard Holloway. Cross-examination. Holloway stood. He was going to try to discredit Maria. It was his only play. Ms. Santos, you testified that you owe Mr. Whitmore $400,000. That's a significant debt, isn't it? It's not a debt. It was a gift. He saved my daughter's life. But you feel obligated to him. I'm grateful to him. Grateful enough to lie for him. Rachel Thornton shot to her feet. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Flynn said. Holloway tried another angle. Ms. Santos, isn't it true that Henry Whitmore threatened to fire you? Yes. Twice last month. So you had a motive to frame Henry Whitmore. Maria's voice was steady. I had a motive to save Mr. Whitmore's life. That's all I cared about. You recorded private conversations without consent. Isn't that illegal? I recorded evidence of a crime. I did what I had to do to protect someone I care about. Holloway realized he was losing. No further questions. Maria stepped down from the witness stand. She walked back to her seat behind me. I reached back and squeezed her hand. She'd been magnificent. Rachel Thornton called her next witness. The Commonwealth calls Lisa Chun. Lisa walked to the stand and was sworn in. She looked nervous but determined. Ms. Chun, where did you work in March of last year? Carmichael Pharmaceuticals in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I was a research chemist. Did you know Rebecca Chun Whitmore? Yes. She worked there for 6 years in regulatory compliance. What happened in March regarding arsenic? Our inventory showed arsenic trioxide missing. Approximately 50 grams. Enough to kill many people. Did you discover who took it? Yes. Security footage showed Rebecca entering the restricted storage area on March 15th. She came out 2 minutes later with her lab coat pockets full. Thornton showed the video to the jury. Rebecca on screen, entering the storage area, emerging with bulging pockets. The timestamp clear. March 15th, 7:32 a.m. What happened after you discovered this? I reported it to my supervisor. Rebecca resigned 2 weeks later. The company decided not to pursue it. Had Rebecca asked you questions about arsenic before this? Yes. She asked about detection methods, about symptoms, about how long it stays in the system, about whether heart failure could mask poisoning. I thought she was just curious. I answered her questions. When did you realize the significance of those questions? When I saw her picture on the news, when I learned her father-in-law had been poisoned, I knew exactly where that arsenic had come from. No further questions. Patricia Walsh cross-examined. She tried to establish that the video was unclear, that the pockets could have been full of anything, that Lisa's testimony was speculation. But the video didn't lie, and the timeline was damning. Rebecca had stolen arsenic in March, 9 months before the poisoning. This was an impulse. This was planning. The trial was just beginning, but the evidence was already overwhelming. Day 3 of the trial. The courtroom darkened as Rachel Thornton prepared to show the video evidence. A large screen had been set up facing the jury. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The hidden camera footage that would show the defendants in their own words, planning murder. Ladies and gentlemen, Thornton said, you're about to hear the defendants themselves. No interpretation needed. No espin. Just Henry Whitmore and Rebecca Whitmore discussing how to murder Samuel Whitmore. Planning the details. Laughing about it. She pressed play. The screen came alive. My study, 20 feet high on the courtroom wall. The timestamp read October 9th, 2 weeks before the poisoning. Henry and Rebecca alone. I'd been at a property inspection in Cambridge that afternoon. Rebecca held up a small glass vial to the light. This is the final dose. Her voice filled the courtroom. Crystal clear. Are you absolutely sure about the amount? Henry was pacing. The jury could see his anxiety. You calculated it correctly? He asked. It'll cause cardiac arrest within 90 minutes to 2 hours. By the time anyone thinks to run a toxicology screen, it'll be too late. The coroner will see a 72-year-old man with a history of declining health. Heart failure. Natural causes. A juror in the front row gasped. Another leaned forward, staring at the screen. And it can't be traced back to us? Henry's voice. Rebecca's smile was cold. Arsenic mimics heart attack symptoms perfectly. Chest pain, difficulty breathing, cardiac arrhythmia. Everything will point to natural causes. I've researched this thoroughly, Henry. I know exactly what I'm doing. Henry stopped pacing. Once we do this, there's no going back. Once we do this, we're free. $28 million. The company. The properties. The brownstone. Everything he's been hoarding while treating you like a servant instead of his son. The jury was riveted. Several were taking notes. One older woman shook her head slowly, her face twisted in disgust. He gave me a job, Henry started. He gave you scraps, Rebecca cut him off. You've worked for him for 16 years, Henry. 16 years. And what do you have? A salary. No ownership. No real authority. You're 41 years old, and you're still asking Daddy's permission to make basic decisions. Henry's face on screen twisted with resentment. You're right. I know I'm right. Once he signs everything over tomorrow morning, we do it immediately. That same morning. Then we wait exactly 2 weeks. Grieving son. Devastated daughter-in-law. Then we put Whitmore properties on the market, and we're gone. 6 months, Cayman Islands. No extradition. No questions. Rachel Thornton paused the video. The image froze on Rebecca's face. That cold, calculating smile. That was 2 weeks before the poisoning, Thornton said. Planning the timeline. Planning the escape. Planning my client's murder. She played another clip. October 11th. 5 days before the poisoning. Same location. Henry sat in my chair. Behind my desk. Rebecca stood beside him. The confusion is getting worse, Henry said. Everyone at the office has noticed. They all think he's declining. Early dementia, probably. Perfect, Rebecca said. That makes it even more believable when he has a massive heart attack. Stress, age, cognitive decline. It all fits the narrative. What about Maria? Henry asked. She's been watching us. I've seen her. She's suspicious. Rebecca waved her hand dismissively. She's a housekeeper. No one will believe her over us. And once he's gone, we fire her immediately, before she can cause problems. She's been with us 18 years. And she's loyal to him, not to us. She's a liability, Henry. The moment your father is dead, Maria Santos is out. Gone. No evidence. No warning. Just gone. Henry nodded slowly. You're right. I watched the jury. They were watching Henry. His face on that screen. The ease with which he agreed to fire a woman who'd been loyal to our family for 18 years. The coldness. The calculation. Another video. October 13th. 3 days before the poisoning. Late evening. I'd gone to bed. Henry and Rebecca in my living room, drinking wine from my collection. Rebecca raised her glass. To our future. Henry clinked his glass against hers. To freedom. And to your father finally getting what he deserves. They laughed. Both of them. The sound echoed through the courtroom. Laughing about my death while drinking my wine in my home. A juror covered her mouth. Another shook his head, staring at Henry with undisguised contempt. The video continued. More clips. More conversations. Days of planning. Dosage calculations. Alibis. Henry talking about selling the company immediately. Rebecca researching countries without extradition treaties. The two of them discussing exactly how to fake grief at my funeral. When the lights came back up, the courtroom felt heavier. Like everyone had witnessed something they couldn't unsee. Rachel Thornton didn't need to say anything. The videos had spoken for themselves. The Commonwealth calls Dr. Sarah Chun. Dr. Chun took the stand. She explained the medical evidence. The arsenic levels in my blood. The chronic poisoning over 4 months. The acute poisoning in Rebecca. The symptoms that matched perfectly with slow arsenic exposure. In your medical opinion, would Samuel Whitmore have survived without intervention? No. The chronic exposure had already caused significant organ damage. One more dose at the level we found in Rebecca's system would have been fatal. He would have died within hours. And the symptoms would have appeared as what? Cardiac arrest. Heart failure. At his age, with his documented illness over the previous months, it would have been ruled natural causes unless someone specifically tested for heavy metals. Which doesn't happen in most cases? Correct. Unless there's suspicion of poisoning, arsenic isn't part of a standard toxicology screen. Rachel Thorne nodded. So the plan would have worked. If Maria Santos hadn't intervened, yes. Samuel Whitmore would be dead, and no one would have suspected murder. The prosecution rested after 2 more days of testimony. Financial analysts traced the embezzlement. $500,000 over 8 months. 50 transactions. Each one carefully structured to avoid detection. Each one authorized with forged documents. Insurance investigators presented the $7 million in policies. All taken out 9 months earlier. All listing Henry as sole beneficiary. All featuring my signature on applications Rebecca had brought to me buried in stacks of routine paperwork. Computer forensics experts recovered deleted emails. Conversations between Henry and Rebecca discussing dosages, symptoms, timelines. One email from Rebecca to Henry. His blood work won't show anything yet. Doses too small, but accumulating. By October, he'll be weak enough. Confused enough. Ready. Another email from Henry to Rebecca. I can't believe we're really doing this. But you're right. He's never going to give me what I deserve. If I want what's mine, I have to take it. The defense tried. Richard Holloway put Henry on the stand. It was a calculated risk. But Henry's only chance was to convince the jury he'd been manipulated. Mr. Whitmore, Holloway said gently, tell the jury about your relationship with Rebecca. Henry's voice was quiet. Rehearsed. She was everything I'd ever wanted. Strong. Confident. She believed in me when no one else did. Including your father? Especially my father. He never thought I was good enough. Never gave me real authority. Never treated me like an equal. And Rebecca made you feel differently? She made me feel like I mattered. Like I deserved respect. Like I was worth something. Holloway nodded sympathetically. When did the conversations about your father start? About a year ago. Rebecca started pointing out how he controlled everything. How he was never going to give me what I'd earned. How I'd worked for him my whole life and never have anything of my own. And did you believe her? At first, no. But she kept talking. Kept pointing things out. And I started to see it. The way he dismissed my ideas. The way he made decisions without consulting me. The way he held all the power. When did you learn about the poisoning plan? Henry paused. This was the critical moment. The lie he and Holloway had crafted. Not until it was too late. Rebecca told me she was giving him supplements. Vitamins. She said she was trying to help him feel better. I didn't know it was poison. Rachel Thornton was on her feet for cross-examination before Holloway could sit down. Mr. Whitmore, we just watched video of you discussing the final dose of arsenic. We heard you asked if it could be traced. We watched you plan which country to flee to. And you expect this jury to believe you didn't know. Rebecca was controlling. You discussed cardiac arrest, Mr. Whitmore. You talked about making it look like natural causes. You planned a timeline. You laughed about it while drinking your father's wine. Does that sound like someone who didn't know? Henry's facade cracked. I was afraid. You were greedy. Thornton cut him off. You wanted $28 million. You wanted the company. You wanted the properties. And you were willing to murder your father to get them. That's not true. Then why did you embezzle $500,000? Why did you take out $7 million in life insurance? Why did you discuss which country doesn't have extradition? Henry had no answer. You weren't afraid, Mr. Whitmore. You weren't manipulated. You were an active, willing participant in a plot to murder your own father. And the only thing you regret is that you got caught. She turned to the jury. This isn't a man who was controlled. This is a man who made a choice. He chose greed over love. He chose money over family. He chose murder over integrity. And now he has to face the consequences. Patricia Walsh put Rebecca on the stand. It was equally desperate. Rebecca claimed Henry had poisoned me, that she'd known nothing, that she'd been a victim. But the video evidence destroyed her lies. The jury watched her discuss arsenic dosages. Watch her explain how it would mimic heart failure. Watch her steal arsenic from Carmichael Pharmaceuticals on security footage. Watch her plan escape routes to countries without extradition. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Closing arguments came on a Friday afternoon. Rachel Thornton stood before the jury one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the evidence. You've heard the testimony. You've watched these defendants in their own words plan to murder Samuel Whitmore. Not in the heat of passion. Not in self-defense. Not by accident. They planned it for 9 months. They researched it. They stole the materials. They executed it methodically over 4 months. She paused. Samuel Whitmore is alive today because of one person, Maria Santos, a housekeeper who owed him nothing but loyalty. A woman who noticed what his own son refused to acknowledge. That Henry Whitmore was murdering his father. Thornton walked along the jury box. The defense wants you to believe Henry was manipulated, that Rebecca was framed. But the videos don't lie. The financial records don't lie. The stolen arsenic doesn't lie. The deleted emails don't lie. These defendants are guilty of every charge, and justice demands that you hold them accountable. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, their faces told me everything before the forewoman spoke. Judge Margaret Flynn called the court to order. Has the jury reached a verdict? The forewoman stood. She was a woman in her 60s, a retired teacher from Dorchester. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant Henry Whitmore? Guilty. Henry's shoulders sagged. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree? Guilty. On the charge of embezzlement? Guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud? Guilty. On the charge of theft of controlled substances? Guilty. For Rebecca, the same. Guilty. Guilty. Guilty on every single count. Judge Flynn's voice was formal. Final. Henry Whitmore and Rebecca Chin Whitmore, you have been found guilty on all charges. It is the judgment of this court that you each be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder charges. Additional sentences for the remaining charges to run consecutively. You will both die in prison. Life without parole. My son would die in prison. The bailiffs moved forward. They put Henry in handcuffs. Led him toward the door. He looked back at me. Just once. I waited for something. Remorse. Sorrow. Some recognition of what he destroyed. But all I saw was rage. Not guilt over what he'd done. Not shame over betraying his father. Just fury that his plan had failed. That he'd been caught. That he destroyed his life for money he'd never receive. My son was gone. He'd been gone long before Maria spilled that coffee. Long before he sat in that courtroom. He'd been gone the moment he chose greed over love. 3 weeks after the verdict, my attorney Michael Richardson executed the final documents. All assets of the Whitmore estate transferred into the irrevocable trust. The Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection. $28 million. The company, the properties, the brownstone on Beacon Hill. Henry got nothing. When the prison chaplain at Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction informed him, they said he destroyed his cell, threw furniture, screamed until guards restrained him, put him in solitary confinement for 72 hours. The chaplain visited me a week later. He sits alone in that cell. The chaplain said quietly, talks to himself, keeps saying the same thing over and over. What does he say? I killed him for nothing. I killed him for nothing. But he hadn't killed me. That was the final irony. He'd tried. He'd planned. He'd participated. He'd watched me suffer for 4 months. He'd prepared documents to steal everything I'd built. He'd calculated how to spend my money. And in the end, he got nothing. No inheritance. No company. No properties. No freedom. Just a prison cell where he'd spend the rest of his life knowing he'd destroyed everything for money that was never going to be his. That was justice. That was the price of betrayal. 3 months after the verdict, I stood in the new headquarters of the Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection. We'd taken over a renovated building in downtown Boston, 3 blocks from Suffolk County Superior Court, 4,000 square feet of modern office space, accessible design, warm lighting, conference rooms, private consultation areas, and a mission wall displaying our core values in letters 2 feet high. Protect, advocate, empower, heal. This wasn't a mansion. This was a workspace. A place where survivors could walk through the door and feel safe. A place where elderly people being exploited by their own children could find help. A place where families could get justice. Maria Santos stood beside me, looking at the mission wall. She wore a professional suit now instead of a housekeeper's uniform. Business cards in her purse that read, Maria Santos, Director of Victim Services, Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection. It's beautiful, she said quietly. It's necessary, I replied. The foundation had grown faster than I'd expected. $28 million in initial funding gave us resources most nonprofits could only dream of. But it wasn't just about money. It was about creating something good from something terrible. About turning betrayal into protection. Our mission was straightforward. Protect elderly Americans from abuse, financial exploitation, physical harm, emotional manipulation, and neglect. Especially when the abuser was family. Because that's where the deepest betrayals happen. Not from strangers. From the people who are supposed to love you most. We offered comprehensive services. Legal aid for victims who couldn't afford attorneys. Investigative support for families who suspected exploitation. Emergency safe housing for elderly people who needed to escape dangerous situations immediately. Counseling services for the trauma that comes with family betrayal. And advocacy in court, because sometimes the system needs someone to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Maria had assembled a team of 9 professionals. 3 attorneys specializing in elder law and criminal prosecution. 2 licensed clinical social workers who understood the psychological impact of family abuse. 2 private investigators with backgrounds in financial crimes. An office manager who kept everything running smoothly. And a community outreach coordinator who connected with senior centers, hospitals, and social services across Massachusetts. The woman who'd served me coffee and cleaned my home for 18 years now commanded conference rooms. She negotiated with prosecutors. She challenged defense attorneys. She spoke at community forums. Her voice, soft but unshakable, carried the weight of someone who'd faced evil and refused to look away. We have 17 active cases right now, Maria said, reviewing the files on her tablet. 3 are heading toward criminal prosecution. We've recovered over $600,000 in stolen assets so far, and we've relocated 9 survivors to safe housing. 600,000 dollars. 9 lives protected. 17 families getting help. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. My phone rang. It was James Mitchell, my college roommate from Yale, business partner for 15 years, friend through every season of life. He'd attended Margaret's funeral. He'd been at Henry's graduation from Harvard Business School. And when the trial ended, when the verdict came in, James had been the first person to call. "Vince," he said now, "I'm in the lobby. Can I come up?" Of course. James appeared 5 minutes later. He was 71, silver-haired, still sharp despite 2 hip replacements and a pacemaker. He carried a leather folder under his arm. "The foundation looks incredible," he said, looking around. "Margaret would be proud." Margaret, my late wife who died 8 years ago, never knowing that our son would try to murder me for money. "She would have loved this," I said, turning tragedy into purpose. That was always her way. James set the leather folder on the conference table. "I want in, Vince. Officially." "What do you mean?" "I want to join your board of directors. And I'm donating $200,000 to the foundation's startup fund." I stared at him. "James, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." "You know what I've learned in 71 years? Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when it matters. You and I have been friends for 47 years. We've been through everything together. And what Henry did to you," his voice hardened, "that boy was never worthy of what you built. But this foundation is. Let me help." Maria appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Whitmore, we have our first board meeting in 20 minutes. The board meeting was in the main conference room. Maria had arranged everything perfectly. Coffee service, agenda packets, financial projections, case summaries. The board consisted of 5 people. Myself as founder and chairman. Maria Santos as director of victim services. Detective Catherine Morrison from Boston Police Department, who'd led the investigation into my poisoning. Dr. Sarah Chan from Massachusetts General Hospital, who diagnosed the arsenic and saved my life. And now, James Mitchell, representing the business and financial expertise we need to scale the operation. "Welcome, everyone," I said as we took our seats. 3 months ago, this foundation didn't exist. Today, we're helping 17 families. We've recovered over $600,000 in stolen assets. We've seen 3 abusers criminally charged. And we're just getting started. Detective Morrison spoke first. "The Boston Police Department wants to formalize a partnership with the foundation. When we encounter potential elder abuse cases, we'd like to refer victims to your services. Legal aid, safe housing, counseling. Everything we can't provide directly." "We'd be honored," Maria said. Dr. Chan added, "Massachusetts General Hospital is seeing this partnership as a model. We're discussing implementing it across all Boston area hospitals. When emergency departments identify potential poisoning or abuse cases involving elderly patients, they'd have a direct line to your foundation." James reviewed the financial reports. "You're burning through about $200,000 per month in operational costs. Legal fees are the biggest expense, followed by housing assistance. At this rate, you have approximately 11 years of runway before the initial funding is depleted. Which means we need to start fundraising," I said. "Grants, donations, corporate partnerships. We can't rely solely on the initial endowment." "I can help with that," James said. "I still have connections in the business community. I can make introductions." Maria pulled up a slide on the conference room screen. "I like to propose something. A public awareness campaign. Tell the story of what happened to Mr. Whitmore. Use it to educate people about the warning signs of elder abuse. Show them that even successful, intelligent people can be victimized by their own families." I hesitated. The trial had been public. The media coverage relentless. Boston Globe, Boston Herald, every television station. National coverage on CNN and CBS. My face had been everywhere for weeks. Henry's face. Rebecca's face. The story of the housekeeper who saved my life. "People need to hear this," Maria continued. "Not for entertainment. For education. How many other elderly parents are being slowly poisoned right now and don't know it? How many are being financially exploited? How many are being manipulated and isolated? If telling your story saves even one person, isn't it worth it?" She was right. I knew she was right. "Do it," I said. "Tell the story. Use my name. Use everything. If it helps one family recognize the warning signs, if it saves one life the way you save mine, then it's worth every uncomfortable moment. Within 6 months, the Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection had helped 43 families. We'd recovered over $2 million in stolen assets. We'd seen 9 adult children convicted of financial exploitation or abuse. We'd provided emergency housing to 22 survivors. We testified before the Massachusetts state legislature twice, helping pass stronger elder abuse reporting laws. Maria had testified before the state legislature. The housekeeper from East Boston who'd saved a CEO's life. She told her story to a room full of politicians and advocates. She'd explained how she'd noticed the signs, how she'd documented the evidence, how she'd risked everything to save someone she cared about. The legislature passed 3 new laws because of her testimony. Mandatory reporting requirements for financial institutions when they spotted suspicious transactions involving elderly account holders. Stronger penalties for family members convicted of elder abuse. And funding for a statewide elder abuse hotline operated in partnership with foundations like ours. Last month, 60 Minutes had featured Maria's story. The housekeeper who saved a life aired to 12 million viewers. Speaking requests poured in from across the country. Conferences, universities, senior advocacy groups. Everyone wanted to hear from Maria Santos, the woman who'd refused to stay silent. I watch her now, leading our monthly support group in the main conference room. 14 elderly survivors sharing their stories, finding their voices again. Some have been financially exploited by children or grandchildren. Others have been isolated and manipulated. One woman had been physically abused by her daughter-in-law, who wanted to put her in a nursing home and sell her house. They'd all found their way to the Whitmore Foundation, and Maria was helping them find their way back to safety. Time magazine had just named Maria to their list of 100 most influential people in healthcare. A housekeeper from East Boston, an immigrant who'd worked cleaning homes for 25 years, now recognized nationally for her courage and advocacy. My phone buzzed. A text from our office manager. New referral. 82-year-old man in Brookline. Son pressuring him to sell his house. Strange financial activity on bank accounts. Feels familiar. It always felt familiar. Because the patterns of elder abuse were remarkably consistent. Isolation, manipulation, financial exploitation, escalating control, and family members who justified their actions by claiming they deserved the inheritance or that the elderly parent didn't need all that money anyway. I forwarded the message to Maria. Within an hour, one of our investigators would contact the man in Brookline. Within a day, we'd have a preliminary assessment. Within a week, we'd know if criminal prosecution was warranted or if this was a family conflict that needed mediation. Every case mattered. Every person who called our hotline deserved protection. James appeared in my office doorway. He visited every Thursday now. We'd have coffee, review cases, talk about everything except what had happened with Henry. Another case? He asked, seeing my phone. Always another case. He sat down across from my desk. Set down 2 coffee cups. Maria's special blend, made with care every morning. Safe. Warm. A daily reminder that some people choose loyalty over convenience. Henry sent another letter. James said carefully. The 11th letter in 6 months. All unopened. All stacked in my desk drawer. Letters from Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction, where Henry would spend the rest of his life. Still not ready to read them, I said. James nodded. He understood. Some betrayals don't heal with time. They just become scars you learn to live with. How's the new safe house coming? He asked, changing the subject. Opens next month. 10 beds. 24-hour security. Medical staff on site. We're naming it the Margaret Whitmore Memorial House. My late wife's name. Margaret, who died 8 years ago never knowing what our son would become. But you have loved this. Turning our family's tragedy into protection for others. Creating something beautiful from something broken. She would be proud, James said quietly. I hope so. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Detective Catherine Morrison. Samuel, we just arrested a man in Newton. He'd been poisoning his mother for 7 months. Arsenic in her tea. She called our hotline yesterday after seeing Maria on 60 Minutes. Said the symptoms sounded familiar. We tested her blood. Heavy metal poisoning. He confessed this morning. Another life saved. Another family protected. Another abuser facing justice. How's the mother? I asked. She'll recover. We started chelation therapy immediately. She's 78 years old, and she's going to survive because she watched Maria's story on television and recognized the signs. That was the power of telling the truth, of refusing to hide family betrayal behind closed doors, of turning private tragedy into public education. Thank you, Detective. Thank you, Samuel. The Whitmore Foundation is changing how we handle these cases. You're saving lives. I hung up and looked at James. 78 years old, I said. Her son was poisoning her for 7 months. She's alive because Maria told her story on national television. James raised his coffee cup. To Maria, and to second chances. I raised mine. To chosen family. We drank together. 2 old friends who'd known each other for 47 years. Who'd survived everything life had thrown at us. Who'd learned that family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty, trust, love that doesn't calculate cost. Outside our windows, Boston's skyline glittered in the afternoon sun. And for the first time in a year, I felt something I thought Henry had killed forever. Hope. I'm 74 now. 2 years have passed since Maria Santos spilled that cup of coffee and saved my life. When I look back on everything that happened, I see a man who confused success with legacy, who believed blood was thicker than character, who thought building an empire for his son was the same as building a relationship with him. I was wrong about everything that mattered. The Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection has now helped over 200 families across Massachusetts. We've expanded into Rhode Island and Connecticut. We've recovered over $8 million in stolen assets. We've seen 23 abusers convicted and sent to prison. We've provided safe housing to 78 survivors. And we've trained over 500 healthcare workers, police officers, and social workers to recognize the signs of elder abuse. Maria Santos was recently named Person of the Year by the American Association for Elder Justice. The housekeeper from East Boston who'd cleaned my home for 18 years now speaks at conferences across the country. Universities invite her to lecture. Politicians seek her counsel on legislation. She's become a national voice for a problem most people don't want to talk about. Family members who exploit and harm their own elderly parents. But Maria hasn't changed. She's still the same woman who whispered those 4 words that saved my life. Don't drink it, sir. She still makes coffee every morning at the foundation office. She still notices things other people miss. She still has that quiet courage that comes from facing evil and refusing to look away. This morning, I found her in the foundation's small chapel. We'd added it 6 months ago, tucked away on the 2nd floor. A quiet space for survivors who needed to pray or grieve or simply sit in silence. She was alone in the last pew, rosary beads in her hands. Just like that morning at Massachusetts General Hospital 2 years ago. Morning, Maria, I said, sitting beside her. She looked up and smiled. Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. Samuel, I corrected gently. After everything we've been through, I think you can call me Samuel. Old habits, she said softly. 20 years of calling you Mr. Whitmore. 20 years of loyalty. 20 years of integrity. 20 years of being more family to me than my own son ever was. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Sophia called this morning. Your goddaughter. She wanted me to tell you something. Sophia, Maria's daughter. The 5-year-old with stage 3 neuroblastoma I'd helped save 20 years ago. She was 27 now, a nurse at Boston Children's Hospital, engaged to a pediatric surgeon, living the life she wouldn't have had if the experimental treatment hadn't worked. What did she say? She's pregnant. You're going to be a godfather again. I felt my throat tighten. That's wonderful news. She wants to name the baby Samuel if it's a boy, Margaret if it's a girl. I couldn't speak, couldn't find words. This woman whose daughter I'd helped save was naming her child after me and my late wife, creating family where blood had failed. Maria, you saved my daughter's life, Samuel. You paid $400,000 without hesitation. You never asked for anything in return. You never treated me differently because of it. You just did it because it was right, because you cared. She wiped her eyes. And when I saw what they were doing to you, when I realized they were poisoning you, I couldn't stand by. How could I? You saved my child. How could I let them kill you? You didn't owe me anything. I owed you everything. But more than that, I cared about you. You were never just my employer. You were family. And family protects family. The chapel door opened. James Mitchell walked in, carrying his usual Thursday morning coffee offering. Am I interrupting? He asked. Never, I said. Come sit with us. James sat in the pew in front of us, turning to face us. He'd become a permanent fixture at the foundation. Board member, major donor, volunteer mentor for other families navigating the complex legal system after discovering elder abuse. I just got off the phone with the Attorney General's office. James said, they want to use the Whitmore Foundation as a model for a statewide network. Elder protection centers in every county, all following our protocols, all using our training materials. That's incredible, Maria said. It's necessary, James replied. What happened to Samuel isn't rare. It happens every day, in every city, in every neighborhood. Adult children who decide they deserve their inheritance early, who convince themselves their parents don't need all that money, who rationalize theft as simply taking what's rightfully theirs. He looked at me. But most victims don't survive. Most don't have a Maria Santos watching. Most don't have hidden cameras recording. Most just die, and everyone calls it natural causes, and the children inherit everything, and no one ever knows it was murder. Which is why we do this work, I said. Why we tell the story. Why we train people to recognize the signs. My phone buzzed. A text from our office manager. Boston Globe wants an interview. They're doing a feature on elder abuse prevention. Want to center it on the foundation's work. I forwarded it to Maria. You should do this interview. They want you, Samuel. You're the founder. And you're the hero. You're the one people need to hear from. You're the one who saved my life. Maria smiled slightly. We saved each other. She was right. I'd saved her daughter 20 years ago without thinking twice. She'd saved my life 2 years ago with 4 whispered words. We'd built something together that transcended employer and employee. We become family. Our afternoon meeting was with a new referral. Margaret Chun, 76 years old, retired librarian from Newton. She sat in our consultation room, nervous hands clutching a worn purse. Thank you for seeing me, she said quietly. I didn't know where else to go. Maria sat beside her, her voice gentle. You're safe here, Margaret. Tell us what's happening. It's my daughter-in-law, Lisa. She married my son, Robert, 3 years ago. At first, everything was fine. But then she started asking questions about my finances, about my house, about my savings. She said, Robert, and I should think about moving in together, that I was getting too old to live alone. Margaret's voice shook. Then money started disappearing from my accounts. Small amounts at first. 1,000 here, 2,000 there. I thought I was forgetting. Getting confused. But then I checked my bank statements carefully. $50,000 gone in 6 months. Maria made notes. Do you have access to those statements? Yes. I brought everything. Margaret pulled out a folder. Bank statements. Credit card bills. Canceled checks. All with signatures that didn't quite match hers. One of our investigators, David Chun, reviewed the documents. These are forged signatures. Someone's been writing checks from your account and forging your name. I confronted Lisa last week, Margaret continued. She said I was confused, that I'd given her permission, that I was getting dementia and didn't remember. She said, Robert, and I should have me evaluated by a doctor, that maybe I needed to be in a facility where I'd be properly cared for. The classic pattern. Gaslight the victim. Make them doubt their own memory. Isolate them. Control them. Then take everything. Margaret, I said gently, has Lisa or Robert ever pressured you to change your will? She looked down. Yes. Last month. They brought paperwork. Said it was just an update. I signed it because Lisa said it was important, but I didn't really understand what I was signing. Do you have a copy? No, they took it with them. David made a note. We'll need to subpoena that will, and we'll need to contact the district attorney's office. This is elder financial abuse. It's a crime. Margaret started crying. Robert is my only son. How could he let this happen? How could he stand by while his wife steals from me? I knew exactly how. Because weak men let strong women do terrible things. Because Henry had stood by while Rebecca poisoned me. Because sons sometimes choose their wives over their parents, greed over love, comfort over courage. We're going to help you, Maria said, holding Margaret's hand. We're going to recover your money. We're going to make sure you're safe. And we're going to hold them accountable. 3 weeks later, Robert Chun and Lisa Chun were arrested for elder financial abuse and forgery. They'd stolen $80,000. They'd forged Margaret's signature on checks, and a new will that left everything to Robert. They'd been planning to have her declared incompetent and committed to a nursing home so they could sell her house. Margaret was now living in the Margaret Whitmore Memorial House, our secure, safe housing facility. She had counseling, legal representation, support, and most importantly, she had people who believed her when she said something was wrong. That was what the foundation did. We believed survivors. We investigated. We gathered evidence. We prosecuted abusers. We protected the vulnerable. James and I sat in my office that evening, the city lights of Boston glowing through the windows. You know what I've learned? James said, looking at his coffee cup. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when it matters. Maria taught me that. Maria, Detective Morrison, Dr. Chun, Michael Richardson. All of us. We're your real family, Vince. We're the ones who stood by you, who helped you survive, who helped you build something meaningful from the ashes. He was right. My real family wasn't Henry, who'd try to murder me. It was Maria, who'd save me. It was James, who'd supported me. It was Catherine Morrison, who'd investigated. It was Sarah Chun, who diagnosed me. It was Michael Richardson, who'd protected my legal interests. It was chosen family, built on loyalty, trust, shared values, love that didn't calculate cost or expect repayment. Henry writes me letters, I said quietly. Every month. I still don't open them. Do you want to? No. There's nothing he could say that would matter. He made his choice. He chose greed over love. He chose Rebecca over me. He chose murder over integrity. And now he's spending the rest of his life in a cell at Cedar Junction, knowing he destroyed everything for money he'll never receive. Do you feel guilty? For what? For changing my will? For pressing charges? For testifying against him? For still being alive? The question hit deeper than I expected. No, I said finally. I don't feel guilty for surviving. I feel grateful. Grateful for Maria. Grateful for the foundation. Grateful for the chance to turn betrayal into purpose. Grateful for chosen family that proved more loyal than blood. James raised his coffee cup. To chosen family. Maria appeared in the doorway, her coat on, ready to head home to East Boston. Good night, Samuel. Good night, James. Good night, Maria. Thank you for everything. She smiled. That same quiet smile she'd had for 20 years. The smile of someone who knows her own worth. Who knows she saved a life. Who knows she built something meaningful. After she left, James and I sat in comfortable silence. Two old men who'd known each other for 49 years. Who'd survived everything life had thrown at us. Who'd learned that the deepest bonds aren't formed by blood, but by choice. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Sophia Santos, Maria's daughter. Uncle Samuel, I wanted you to be the first to know. The ultrasound confirmed it. We're having a boy. We're naming him Samuel James Santos. After you, and after the courage to stand up for what's right. We love you. Samuel James. Named after me, and after the concept of justice. I showed the text to James. He read it, and I saw his eyes water. You saved that girl's life 20 years ago, he said. And now she's naming her son after you. That's legacy, Vince. Not money. Not buildings. Not a company. That's real legacy. He was right. Henry would die in prison, remembered only for his betrayal. But I would be remembered by Sophia's son. By the 200 families the foundation had helped. by the thousands more we'd help in the years to come. That was the real inheritance. Not what you leave behind in a will, but what you build while you're alive. The lives you touch, the people you protect, the love you give without expecting anything in return. I'd spent 50 years building an empire for a son who didn't deserve it. Now, I was spending my final years building a foundation that would outlive us all. Outside my window, Boston glowed in the darkness. Somewhere in this city, an elderly parent was being exploited by their own child. Somewhere, an adult son or daughter was rationalizing theft as inheritance. Somewhere, a family was about to be torn apart by greed. But because of what had happened to me, because of Maria's courage, because of the foundation we'd built together, some of those families would find help. Some of those victims would survive. Some of those abusers would face justice. That was chosen family. That was real love. That was legacy. And for the first time since Henry's betrayal, I felt whole. When I think about that October morning 2 years ago, when Rebecca placed that cup of poisoned coffee in front of me, when Maria whispered those 4 words that saved my life, it feels like a different lifetime. Like it happened to someone else. But it happened to me, and it changed everything. Here's what this experience taught me. What I want every person watching this to understand. What I need you to hear before this story ends. Don't ignore the warning signs when someone you love starts seeing you as an asset instead of a person. When your children start asking too many questions about your finances. When they pressure you to sign documents you don't understand. When they insist on controlling your bank accounts or managing your medications. When they isolate you from friends who might notice something's wrong. These aren't signs of love. These are signs of danger. Don't wait until there's poison in your cup to ask hard questions. Don't assume that because someone is your blood relative, they have your best interests at heart. Don't confuse loyalty with biology. Some of the most dangerous predators wear the mask of family. I spent 72 years believing that being a good father meant giving everything to your son, building an empire so he'd never struggle, providing opportunities so his life would be easier than mine. I thought love meant unconditional generosity, but I was wrong. Real love requires boundaries. Real love demands accountability. Real love means teaching your children that integrity matters more than inheritance. That character is more valuable than money. That some things can't be bought or stolen or inherited. I failed Henry in that regard. I gave him everything except the one thing he needed most. The understanding that he had to earn respect through his own actions. But he couldn't simply wait for me to die and inherit success. That being my son wasn't enough. He had to become a man worth respecting. Rebecca saw that weakness in him. She exploited it. She whispered the right lies. She fed his resentment. She convinced him that I was the obstacle to his happiness. And Henry, too weak to see through her manipulation, too comfortable in his entitlement, chose to believe her. But here's the truth that Henry learned too late. Weakness isn't the same as innocence. Passivity isn't the same as victimhood. Standing by while someone commits evil makes you complicit in that evil. Henry could have stopped Rebecca at any point during those 4 months. He could have warned me. He could have gone to the police. He could have chosen his father over his wife. But every single day he made the same choice. Comfort over courage. Greed over love. Silence over integrity. That's what makes his betrayal so painful. Not that he was evil, but that he was too weak to be good. I thank God every morning that Maria Santos had the courage Henry lacked. I thank God that she valued integrity over comfort, that she risked her job, her security, her safety to save my life, that she spent 7 weeks documenting evidence while my own son watched me die slowly and did nothing. Maria owed me nothing. She could have stayed silent. She could have told herself it wasn't her business. She could have looked away like so many people do when they see evil happening. But she didn't. She chose courage. And that choice saved my life. The Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection exists because of her. Every family we help, every dollar we recover, every abuser we prosecute, every survivor we protect, it all traces back to Maria Santos whispering 4 words and knocking a cup of poison coffee out of my hands. That's the power of one person choosing to do the right thing, even when it's terrifying. even when it costs something, even when it would be easier to look away. We've helped over 200 families now. We've seen too many stories just like mine. Adult children who poison their parents, who forge signatures, who steal life savings, who isolate elderly parents from anyone who might notice the abuse, who convince themselves they're not doing anything wrong because the money will eventually be theirs anyway. One case still haunts me. Richard Parker, 79 years old, from Cambridge. His daughter Jennifer had been poisoning him for 8 months before he died. She'd used the same method. Arsenic in his morning coffee. Small doses. Carefully calculated. She'd researched it online. She'd stolen the materials from a laboratory where she worked. She'd planned every detail. Richard died believing he had a terminal illness. Believing his daughter was caring for him in his final months. He never knew she was the one killing him. Jennifer inherited $2 million. She'd already spent half of it before Richard's sister became suspicious and contacted us. We investigated. We found the evidence. We went to the police. Jennifer Parker is now serving life without parole at Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Framingham. But Richard is still dead. And that's the tragedy. We can't save everyone. We can't turn back time. We can only try to protect the ones who find us before it's too late. That's why I'm telling this story. Not for sympathy, not for attention, but because someone watching this right now might recognize the signs. Someone might be experiencing what I experienced. Unexplained illness, confusion, financial irregularities, family members who are too eager to help, too insistent on controlling things, too interested in inheritance. If that's you, please listen carefully. You're not being paranoid. You're not imagining things. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Tell someone outside your immediate family. Contact your local police department. Contact Adult Protective Services. Contact the Whitmore Foundation or organizations like it. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't assume it'll get better. Don't make excuses for people who are exploiting you just because they're family. Blood relation doesn't give anyone the right to harm you. Being someone's parent doesn't mean you deserve to be poisoned. Building an inheritance doesn't obligate you to die for it. You have the right to be safe. You have the right to control your own finances. You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect yourself even from your own children. And if you're someone who suspects a family member or friend is being abused, please speak up. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't tell yourself it's not your business. Be like Maria Santos. Document what you see. Report it to authorities. Risk the discomfort of speaking truth. You might save a life. Henry writes to me every month from Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Cedar Junction. 12 letters so far. I still haven't opened any of them. It's in a box in my office closet, sealed, unread. People ask me if I'll ever read them, if I'll ever forgive him. If there's any part of me that wants reconciliation, the answer is no. Not because I'm cruel, not because I lack compassion, but because forgiveness without accountability is just enabling. And Henry has never taken accountability for what he did. He's never admitted he was wrong. He's never acknowledged that he chose to participate in a plot to murder his own father. He's never expressed genuine remorse for the pain he caused. What he expresses, according to the prison chaplain who visits him, is self-pity, anger that he got caught, rage that the inheritance he killed went to a foundation instead, bitterness that his wife Rebecca is also in prison for life, unable to comfort him or validate his choices. That's not remorse. That's regret over consequences. So no, I won't read his letters. I won't visit him. I won't offer the forgiveness he hasn't earned and doesn't truly want. He made his choice. And choices have consequences. My real family now consists of people who chose me, not people who share my DNA. Maria Santos, who saved my life. James Mitchell, who stood by me for 49 years. Catherine Morrison, who investigated and prosecuted. Sarah Chun, who diagnosed and treated. Michael Richardson, who protected my interests. These are the people who showed up when it mattered, who stood by me when everything fell apart, who helped me build something meaningful from the ruins of betrayal. This is what I want young people to understand. What I want parents to teach their children. Family is built, not born. Loyalty is earned, not inherited. Love is demonstrated through actions, not proclaimed through words. I failed to teach Henry these lessons. I gave him everything material and nothing moral. I built him an empire, but didn't build his character. That's on me. That's my failure as a father. But I'm trying to do better now. The foundation is my second chance. My opportunity to build something that actually matters. Not a real estate portfolio. Not a company that generates profit, but an organization that protects vulnerable people from those who should love them most. Sophia Santos is having a son. She's naming him Samuel James. After me and after justice. That little boy will grow up knowing he's named after his grandfather's friend. After a man who helped save his grandmother's daughter. After the principle that you stand up for what's right even when it costs you everything. That's legacy. That's inheritance. That's what lasts. Not money in a bank account. Not properties on a balance sheet. Not companies that can be sold or dissolved. But values passed down. Stories that teach courage. Examples that inspire integrity. If you take nothing else from this story, remember this. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself. Choose your family carefully. Don't confuse blood with loyalty. And if you see someone being harmed, speak up. Document the truth. Risk the discomfort. Be the Maria Santos in someone else's story. Because evil thrives when good people stay silent. Abuse continues when witnesses look away. Elderly parents die when nobody has the courage to whisper 4 simple words. Don't drink it. Trust me. The Whitmore Foundation for Elder Protection will continue this work long after I'm gone. The endowment is structured to last in perpetuity. The board is committed. The staff is trained. The protocols are documented. This isn't about me anymore. It's about a mission that's bigger than any one person. We've helped over 200 families. We've recovered $8 million in stolen assets. We've seen 23 abusers sent to prison. We've housed 78 survivors in safe locations. We've trained hundreds of professionals to recognize the signs. But we're just getting started. If this story moved you, I'm asking you to do 3 things. First, share it. Share it with elderly parents or grandparents. Share it with friends who work with senior populations. Share it on social media. Share it anywhere it might reach someone who needs to hear it. Because every share might save a life. Second, learn the warning signs of elder abuse. Unexplained financial transactions. Sudden changes in wills or legal documents. Isolation from friends and family. Medication mismanagement. Unexplained injuries or illnesses. A family member who insists on controlling all aspects of the elderly person's life. Know the signs. Watch for the patterns. Trust your instincts. Third, if you or someone you know is experiencing elder abuse, get help. Contact your local adult protective services. Contact the police. Contact the Whitmore Foundation at whitmorefoundation.org or call our hotline. We're here. We believe you. We'll help you. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't suffer in silence. Don't assume it'll get better on its own. Reach out. Get help. Fight back. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be protected. You deserve to live your final years in peace, not in fear. God bless Maria Santos for having the courage to save my life. God bless the Whitmore Foundation team for carrying on this mission. God bless the survivors who found the strength to speak up and seek help. And God bless anyone watching this who decides today to be the person who speaks up, who documents the truth, who saves a life. Trust your instincts. Protect the vulnerable. Choose courage over comfort. And remember, family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when you need them most. That's justice. That's love. That's legacy. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it saves a life.